everyone, I'm Yuko. 皆さんこんにちは。スピーキング力養成英語コーチの日野優子です。この番組ではこれまで努力をして TOEIC で700点以上、800点以上取れるようになったとか、日常的に英語の資料や本、論文なんかを読む機会があるんだけれど、英語を話そうと思うと思うように話せない。そんなお悩みをお持ちの方に向けて、英語をスムーズに話すための現実的な技術や、英語をコミュニケーションツールとして堂々と使うためのマインドセットの作り方をお伝えしています。英語学習をこれまで頑張ってきたからこそ、今度は英語をスムーズに話す力を身につけて、ご自分の人生やお仕事の選択肢を広げたい、そんな思いをお持ちの方を応援しています。今回のポッドキャストはゲストにアンディ・モリンスキー先生にお越しいただきました。アンディ先生はブランダイス大学インターナショナルビジネススクールで教授をされています。コロンビア大学で国際関係学の修士、そしてハーバード大学で心理学の修士を取った後、ハーバード大学で組織行動学の博士号を取得。現在は心理学、また組織行動学の教鞭を取りながら、文化的、そして心理的なコンフォートゾーンを出るための勇気や気づきを育てるサポートを行っていらっしゃいます。ハーバードビジネスレビューやニューヨークタイムズなどにも定期的に寄稿して、その気づきをシェアされています。私がアンディ先生とご縁をいただいたのは、先生の本の Global Dexterity というものを出会ったことがきっかけでした。で、たまたまこの本に出会ったんですが、この本には先生が長年リサーチから派遣された自分自身を見失うことなしに異文化に適応して、そしてそこで望む結果を得るためにはどうしていけばいいか。一人一人がその状況を自分らしく乗り越えていくための方法が詳しく述べられています。途中のお話でも出てきますが、例えばアメリカでは、また欧米では積極的にスモールトークとかネットワーキングをして、そこで自分のことをアピールする。そういう傾向があります。そしてお仕事につなげていくっていうことになるんですが、一方、日本とか、アジアの国では自分のことを前に出して話すっていうことがあまりありません。で、その違いがあるんだなっていうのは頭に分かっていても、いざその場に出ると、自分のことを積極的にアピールしたり、意見をどんどん言うっていうことが難しい。そういう方はとても多いのではないでしょうか。私自身もそうです。で、このメソッドは、そのギャップを自分らしく埋めるためにはどうすればいいか。自分らしく行動して、そこで成果を得るためにはどうしたらいいかという方法を教えてくれます。今回はそのグローバルデクステリティの理論について、またこの方法の使い方を学んで異文化適応に悩む方々のサポートをしたい方に向けたサティフィケーションコースについて詳しくお話を伺っています。私もこのコースを取ったんですが、いろいろな文化的、職業的なバックグラウンドを持つ方々とお話を伺ったり、意見交換したりと、新しい発見がたくさんありました。違う文化の中で自分らしく花を咲かせるってどういうこと？そんなヒントや勇気をもらえるお話がたくさんだと思いますので、エピソードをぜひお楽しみください。で、本やコースの URL を備考欄に貼っておきますので、気になる方はそちらもぜひチェックしてください。で、今回はちょっと英語のインタビューになります。で、後から聞き直すと、私こういうとこ言い間違えてるなとか、いろいろあるんですが、これも私自身も経験だと思って楽しんで前に進んでいきたいと思います。それではエピソードをお聞きください。本日はブランダイス大学教授で異文化適応や組織行動学について研究をされているアンディ・モリンスキー先生にゲストにお越しいただきました。で、アンディ先生とは私が Global Dexterity という This book この本を読んで感銘を受けて先生のコースをちょっと取ってみたいなということで受講してから交流をさせていただくことになりました。で、本日はね、その Global Dexterity のエッセンスとか、サティフィケーションコースもしてらっしゃるので、そのお話を聞いていきたいと思います。So, Professor Molinsky, thank you so much for joining us today. I briefly introduced you in Japanese, but could you tell us about yourself, the background, or the work you do?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, great. So I'm a professor at Brandeis University, which is a Research University in Boston, Massachusetts. My background is that I have a PhD in organizational behavior and psychology. And for the last 25 years, I've been researching, teaching, training people to learn to adapt and adjust their behavior across cultures. And based on my book, Global Dexterity, and all my research, I've created the Global Dexterity certification course so I can teach people who are teachers and trainers and coaches how they can integrate the concepts of global dexterity into the work that they do and become certified.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. So let's focus on global dexterity you just mentioned. Could you tell us what the global dexterity means and what inspired you to develop this concept?
Sure. So global dexterity is the idea of adapting and adjusting your behavior across cultures to be effective in whatever situation you need to be, but without losing who you are in the process. So it serves two simultaneous purposes. It allows you to be effective and successful and achieve your goals, but also to feel authentic to who you are. And you might think that those two things are not compatible, that it's difficult to have those together. But that's not what I've found in my research. And so where global dexterity came from, it originally came from my PhD dissertation at Harvard University in Boston, where I was studying people who were learning to adapt and adjust their behavior to the United States. In fact, I was working with Russians back in the day, 25 years ago, who were learning to interview and find jobs and speak with bosses and all the details and behaviors associated with American job search processes, which were very different from what they would have done in Russia. And what I noticed in my work initially back then was that it was fairly easy for them to understand the differences in their mind. They could tell you exactly what the differences were. But in a real situation, when the lights came on and when the pressure was there, they had a very difficult time actually adapting and adjusting their behavior, switching their behavior. And so at the time, and frankly, still today, most of the work in cross-cultural work is about differences, just about differences. How the Japanese are different from the Americans, how they're in my case, how the Russians were different from the Americans in terms of job search. But what I found was that it wasn't just enough to understand the differences. To be successful, you need to learn to adapt and adjust your behavior in light of those differences, which not only includes cultural differences, but also a keen understanding of psychology. And that's where I developed the concept of global dexterity. And over the past 25 years, I've been applying it to many more contexts, than just Russians and Americans all around the world. And so that's what global dexterity is.
I really love your idea. Adopting new culture without losing yourself, that inspired me a lot. So my next question is, there are many theories about cross-cultural understanding, but how is global dexterity different from other approaches? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, the most famous approach is what we call the Hofstede approach, and that's very famous because it was originated in the 1970s. A professor from the Netherlands, actually, Geert Hofstede, was working at IBM at the time, and he got access to all the employees around the world at IBM, and he was able to do some cross-cultural research, which at the time, 50 years ago, was cutting edge.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to describe some core cultural differences in terms of values across the world. That really has been the pattern and the style of cross-cultural research ever since, about differences.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important when you're adapting and adjusting behavior and when you're learning to be successful in a different culture. I think it is important to understand differences. There's no question about that. But differences are not enough. To be able to be successful, to achieve your goals, you need to be able to learn to adapt and adjust your behavior. And that's why global dexterity is unique. It's a more dynamic approach towards cultural adaptation that doesn't just stop with the idea of cultural differences. It then helps someone develop the capacity, the skills, but also the courage, actually, to be able to learn to adapt and adjust their behavior. And that's why it's unique.
I believe that this approach has changed many people's lives. So could you share some examples of individuals who experienced a significant transformation by adopting global dexterity method?
Give you a lot of examples from Asian cultures. So I think that people from a lot of Asian cultures are uncomfortable promoting themselves.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people from Asian cultures aren't comfortable making small talk, especially with supervisors, especially with higher authority figures, because the norms in Asia, there's much more of a higher power distance in Asian cultures, whereas in the United States and also in some Western European cultures, it's much flatter. So you need to be able to make small talk with your boss, for instance, talk about the baseball game or the movie or their travel or their kids or something, which would be very uncomfortable to do. Another example that I see with that people from Asia is speaking up in a meeting, especially where there are people who are much more senior. So I was actually speaking with people at a very large consulting firm, a global consulting firm in the United States, Price Waterhouse Coopers, PwC, which is global. And they were talking about how some of their employees from Asian cultures can struggle initially at the company because at Price Waterhouse, the corporate culture is such that you need to speak up in small meetings. And you're expected to actually challenge people who are more senior to you, challenge their ideas. Because that's the culture. The philosophy is that the very best ideas come from debate and discussion. But if you lived your whole life in Asia, you were taught to speak only when spoken to create harmony, to not rock the boat, to be polite and deferential to people who are higher authority figures. That behavior in a Western context can be very challenging for you. And so global dexterity can be very, very helpful because it can identify for you what the cultural code is. In other words, what the rules for the situation in the new culture are and how they differ from your own personal comfort zone. Global dexterity can also help you understand the psychological roadblocks or the challenges that are holding you back inside, like why psychologically it's hard for you. And then global dexterity can also help you develop ways of customizing your behavior so you can create sometimes even a blend or a hybrid or a fusion of behavior that is effective in the new context, but has your own twist to it, your own touch, so that it feels okay to you. And this is a process of experimentation where you might try something, see how it feels, see if it's effective. But over time, you'll come up with your own style, your own blend. And I find that ends up being very, very helpful for people from Asian cultures to be able to adapt to Western culture. So that's one example, if that is helpful.
Yeah, I can totally relate to myself because I have an Asian background. So sometimes I have a lot of hesitation to speak up in a conversation, or especially with the people in a higher status. So yeah, thank you so much.
And can I also say that the same logic would hold for people who are Western coming to Asia? It's just the reverse. So global dexterity can be quite helpful in that direction as well.
So how do they adjust their understanding or their behavior? Could you give me some examples? The Westerner coming to Japan.
Right. So how to deliver negative feedback, for instance.
Yeah.
Where in the United States, you might say something, you might just deliver the feedback, or you might, whereas in Asian cultures, there's this notion of face threat and harmony, and you would have to figure out a way to deliver the message, but in a way that maybe is also more indirect, maybe less direct than in a United States context. And so someone coming in that direction from the Western culture to an Asian culture would need to understand the norms, the rules in that culture, let's say Japan, and then they would need to figure out how they can do that in a way that is effective in Japanese culture, but also feels they come to an understanding in their minds of why this matters, why this is important, and how they can do it in a way that feels authentic enough to them so that they're able to do it. And so that would be an example.
You also told us remembering the motivation to be successful there is a key.
Absolutely. So we call that conviction. So the idea that you're customizing your mindset. You're not just customizing your behavior, how you act, but you're also customizing how you think and understand that behavior, why it matters to you to learn to be able to adapt. Maybe also what the cultural logic is within that new culture. Like why is harmony and indirectness and deference to an authority figure, why is that important in an Asian context? Or the reverse, if someone from Asia is coming to the West, why is it important that people speak up in meetings and disagree with an authority figure? Why within the logic of an American cultural system, why does that matter? Why is that important? And once you can start to understand that and step outside your own cultural mindset, that gives you more motivation or even a license, like permission in a sense in your mind to be able to adapt. And so that's helpful as well.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing the great insight. So now I'd like to focus on the certification course. Could you tell us about the Global Dexterity certification course, firstly?
Sure. So we've been doing it for, I think now 4 years, and maybe 5 even. I work with 2 wonderful colleagues of mine, Melissa Hahn, who is American, and she's a real expert cross-cultural coach, an intercultural professional. And then I also work with Kinga Białek, who is Polish. She's from Poland, Warsaw, and she's a cross-cultural psychologist, and her expertise is in training in groups. So what's nice is that you've got me, who is the guy who I wrote the book and I did the research, and I also apply these concepts with teaching and training and coaching. I do my own applications. But then you also have Melissa, who's an expert at coaching, and Kinga, who's an expert at training. So you've got a lot of expertise in the room. And the program is a virtual program. And we have people from all around the world. We've had people from Japan, several people from Japan, including you. We've had people from Korea. We've had people from the Middle East. We've had people from all over Europe, many, many different countries in Europe. We've had people from Latin America, from people from North America, Canada and the US and Mexico, lots and lots of people. And what's fun is that we put together these cohorts, and the cohorts are small. They're usually between, I want to say, 3 and 8 people, let's say. And we meet virtually. We have 4 main meetings. Where I teach people about global dexterity, and then there are different opportunities, homeworks, where you can learn to master the global dexterity concepts and then start to learn to apply them in different settings. For instance, we have a really nice case study of a Chinese professional who comes to the United States and tries to be successful in the United States, and that's a really nice case study to apply your concepts. And so you're learning about global dexterity, you're learning from me, you're learning from Melissa and Kinga, you're learning from your cohort members from around the world. And at the end of the time together, you create an original application of global dexterity, something that where you take the concepts of global dexterity and apply them to the work that you do. So if you're a coach, maybe you create a sample version of how you might use global dexterity in coaching. If you're a teacher, same thing. If you're a trainer, same kind of thing. And the purpose of this is so that once you leave the program, you're ready to be able to apply and use global dexterity in your work immediately. So we're trying to help people the expression in English would be hit the ground running. So to be able to use it immediately.
Who typically take this course and what motivates them to join this course? Could you share it?
Sure. So we've had a lot of different people from different backgrounds. I think people who take the course tend to be coaches, trainers, teachers, human resources professionals, HR professionals in companies even sometimes. So we have independent people and also people in companies. But we've also had people, all sorts of other interesting people. So we've had therapists, we've had managers, we've had executives, we've even had some people who just want to take it because they're interested, simply because they're interested. But I would say, the majority of people are trainers, coaches, teachers, or HR managers. That would be the most common people. Oh, also people who are interested in study abroad. People at universities sometimes have taken the course too, just so that they can help their students. So variety of different people. And why have they taken it? They've taken it, I think, so that they can gain expertise in a method, so that they can then use that method in the work that they do. So they're able to develop the skills so that it can enhance and improve what they're able to do. In some cases, people have started to charge more money actually for their services because they're certified in Global Dexterity, so it can help them monetarily too. They get access to a community, and that's nice because you have a community of people around the world who are also certified in Global Dexterity that you can connect with. People take it sometimes to have access to me. Maybe they've enjoyed the Global Dexterity book and approach, and they want to use it, and they want to work with me. And so I'm very involved in the process every single, session. And I think also people take the course because we provide a set of digital tools, which include videos and case studies and so on, lots of different educational tools that people can use during the course to master Global Dexterity, but also after the course, they can use those sometimes in their teaching and training so that they have access forever to those tools. And so that's something people also find useful. So I think those are the reasons.
Thank you for sharing that. I myself took this course and find that it's very beneficial and helpful. I'd like to know how the others they have learned from this course.
Global Dexterity is a very simple and powerful approach. And I purposely make it simple. And the reason I make it simple is because I think that if it's too complex, it's too difficult to apply and use. So you want to try to find something that is simple, but not simplistic. In other words, it's very rich and interesting, but it's clear and simple. And so they learn this clear, simple, practical approach. And there's really three stages of it. The first is to try to understand and diagnose the cultural differences using a tool that I created called the cultural code to help people understand what their own code is, what the new code is, what the differences between their own code and the new code might be, to really specify where the challenge is. That's step one. Step two is to step inside yourself and understand the psychological roadblocks. So maybe there's a difference in how you need to behave that you realize with the code, but then how does that make you feel? Maybe it makes you feel inauthentic. Maybe it makes you feel frustrated. Maybe it makes you feel incompetent. These feelings, these psychological roadblocks, I call them, can interfere with your ability to be able to be effective, right? And so that is a unique approach of Global Dexterity that no other approach really uses to sort of step inside the mindset and psychology of the person trying to adapt behavior. And then the third part, after you've diagnosed the code and understand your psychological challenges, is to try to take action, to try to customize the behavior. And there are two kinds of customization. There's customization of your mindset in terms of how you think about the new behavior. And then there's customization of your behavior itself, like we talked about before, where you try to find a way to create that new behavior, but in a way that works for you. we sometimes use the metaphor of a archery target. If you imagine someone with an archery bow and an archery target, you've probably seen an image of a target. And I think sometimes when adapting behavior across cultures, people who are perfectionists think they have to hit that perfect center of the archery target to be effective. But that's not true. There's usually a wider range. And the trick is to find a place in that wider range where you can be effective and achieve your goals, but also stay true to yourself and feel authentic. And so people taking the course learn that, and they learn how to help others with that. And so you're learning this very practical approach. You're practicing it with, by using it in different contexts. You're creating a way that you might then take that approach and connect it to what you do in your everyday work. And then you leave the course with that confidence and those tools to be able to enhance and improve what you do already. And so that's, I think, what people learn.
I'm sure some of the listeners want to know more about this certification course. For those who are interested in this course, what is the next step to take?
Sure. So we have a cohort starting in January 2025. So about a month from now or so.
Yeah.
And I have a web page that provides information about the course, and you can maybe provide a link to that.
Yeah, I will do that.
On my website, that's probably the very best way to learn about the course. And if you're interested, there's an email that you can send me an email personally. Don't be scared. Please send it to me. I respond to everything. And send me an email describing your interest, and I'd be happy to discuss it with you. You could either sign up. You can sign up actually right online on the webpage, or if you have any questions at all, you can send me an email message, and I'm more than happy to, email about it, to speak about it, whatever you'd like. It's a really special program. It's something I love to do. This is something as I said before, I have an everyday. I'm a professor, and I have an everyday job, and I do this as an addition to my job because I really love working with people on this. If you can think about it from my perspective, I did the original research, and then I wrote the book, and then I've done all sorts of Harvard Business Review articles, probably like 50 of them about, adapting behavior and all that kind of stuff. And now I've created this program where I can teach people everything I've learned so that they can then go use these concepts. So for me, it's very gratifying to be able to work with people who are out there in the world, and they can not only just read the book, but actually use the materials. And so that's why I love to do this. Yeah. I also love meeting people.
Yeah, I noticed that. Because there are so many people who have the struggle with adapting new cultures and just trying to be in the culture and bend themselves and burn up. So I think your method is very practical and helpful to change their people's lives. So thank you for sharing your insights today. So we are coming to the end of our interview. So is there anything you would like to share with our audience?
I really hope that that if you're interested, you have a look and reach out, because we'd love to meet you. And I find that in addition to helping people learn global dexterity, as I said, I really love meeting new people and connecting with new professionals out there in the world. It's one of my top things I do in my job. I really love it. So I hope some people are interested.
Yes, of course. 皆さんありがとうございました。でアンディ先生にグローバルデクステリティのお話を伺ったので、もしご興味ある方はね、ぜひね、この本読んでみてください。すごい面白いのでおすすめです。で、ちょっとね、サティフィケーションコースのことについてもお話をしていただきました。で、本当にね、いろんなコースカルチャーの人とお話ができたりとか、実践的なね、どうやってグローバルデクステリティを使っていくかっていうことを教えていただけるので、すごく面白いなっていうふうに思ってます。もしご興味ある方は、リンクをね、ショーノートに貼っておきますので、ぜひアクセスをしてみてください。So I had such a great time with you. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge with us. I'm sure our listeners have gained a deeper understanding of Global Dexterity and its course. So, ありがとうございます。Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
エピソードを最後までお聞きくださりありがとうございました。このお話があなたのお役に立ったなと思われたら、ぜひ番組のフォローや高評価で応援をしていただけるととても励みになります。ただいま英語を話す力、英語コミュニケーション力を今度こそショートカットで作ってしまいたい、そんなご希望をお持ちの方に向けて、そのための方法を概要欄にて無料でプレゼントしています。50分で英語で話す力の作り方がわかる動画講座や PDF 教材などお配りしておりますので、もしご興味のある方はそちらからチェックの上お申し込みお受け取りください。それではまた次回お会いできることを楽しみにしております。スピーキング力養成語コーチ日野優子でした。